We don't take your listening to us for granted. We take it as a duty on our part to keep you informed on what's happening in our country, particularly during this difficult time of COVID-19. We therefore welcome you once again to this broadcast of government and thank you for opening your homes to this broadcast. We also thank our broadcasters, all of them, our radios, our TV channels, and our community radio stations. Today we are talking about sports, arts and culture and certain commitments that were made by the minister as it relates to this area of work, commitments that were made as a consequence of COVID. Thank you very much, my colleague Nyambose, Minister of Arts, Sports and Culture, and the Deputy Minister, Umam Notawe Mafu, most welcome, and the DG, you're most welcome. Without wasting any time, I will now call upon the Minister to speak to the nation. Nyambose.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Minister Mthembu Kabadela, the Deputy Minister of Sport, Arts and Culture, Deputy Minister Nokawe Mafu, the DG of the department, DG Mkize, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. We meet immediately after the Freedom Month, the month of April, which we deemed this year as the month of solidarity and triumph of the human spirit in these challenging times. This month, May month, is the International Workers' Month. We salute workers, especially in our country, who, through their death-defying deeds, ensured that we as South Africa also join the world to enjoy May Day as a public holiday. Similarly, this is also Africa Month. Every year as government and broader society, we pause, reflect, and celebrate our Africanness. We do this as an endeavor to constantly highlight the formation and the importance thereof of the Organization of African Unity, now African Union, on the 25th of May, 1963. And that day, the 25th of May, is Africa Day. Our main recurring theme, which is underlined by our commitment to it as government, is building a better Africa and a better world. This year is special since South Africa, under the leadership of President Ramaphosa, is the chairperson of the African Union. Unity and solidarity of Africans is called upon even in this contemporary period of the challenge of coronavirus pandemic. After the President Ramaphosa, announced a national state of disaster on the 15th of March, following the outbreak of the coronavirus, our department held a consultative meeting with the sport and creative sector. We made a point at the time that the sector is going to be the hardest hit by the pandemic, since the necessary measures to curb the spread of the virus were detrimental and remain detrimental to the sector. We were propelled by this state of affairs when we committed ourselves to do something to try and soften the negative impact of coronavirus. On the 25th of March, we announced a 150 million rands relief fund to assist artists, athletes, technical personnel, and the core ecosystem of the sector. The other part of this fund was open to proposals for live streaming, for live streaming the work of the creatives and athletes, particularly the intergenerational cooperation between younger artists and the legends. We'll come back on this point when we deal with the directions. The deadline for application of the relief fund was the 6th of April. Subsequent to that, we appointed independent adjudicating teams or panels. Let me take the opportunity to once more thank the men and women who agreed to be part of these panels, two of them, one dealing with sport, the other dealing with arts and culture. To start with the adjudication process under sport, this panel was the first to be appointed on the 9th of April and the first to begin the adjudication process. That day, the 9th of April, was also a deadline for proposals for service provider applications on the proposals for live streaming. On the 23rd of April, more than 300 applications were received, and the disbursement of the funds to successful applicants began. On the 24th, 93 successful applicants received their relief fund. Once more in the sporting sector, after the resubmission of applications were referred back to the federations, a total aggregate of 473 applications were received from 25 sporting federations. And on this, 291 were approved for payment. I must also emphasize the point that from the sport point of view, the different federations facilitated the payment of athletes and other technical staff in that area. From the point of arts and culture, the total number adjudicated upon is 1,050, but I must say that more than 1,500 has gone through the hands of the adjudicators. But this is what has been completed. 232 were recommended, meaning as we speak, the process of paying or payment of those started. 603 were not recommended. 203 were referred back to the department. So this is a situation where adjudicators felt maybe something can be done, maybe the department must recheck whether there are any documentation which need to be looked into so that the applicants get their funding, as it were. I must also say that the number of people who were not recommended is huge. I'll come back to that right now. Safe to say about it is that we're concerned that a huge number of people did not succeed. And these applications, you can see that they come from historically disadvantaged communities and its people who desperately need this assistance. At the same time, we, through the adjudicating panel, have to do due diligence to ensure that we adhere by the criteria which has been agreed upon. But we really are concerned, and we are thinking that we need to do something to ensure that in the final end, people who need this assistance get it. Now, some of the reasons for non-compliance, for instance, was that the application from the department, the document itself is missing, or attached but not filled in, or no cancellation or even contract documents for cancellation or even letters, because we know the space we're operating in, that sometimes you don't even get contracts. We said even letters would do. No proof of event at all. Somebody said there was an event which was cancelled, there's no proof, and so on. Postponement and not cancellation was also an issue as we move forward. Remember that in the criteria, the arts and culture, we're saying that we are going for those which have been cancelled, as it were. We're especially concerned when the adjudication panel interacted with us and raised possible reasons for people not to access this funding. One of those is that they pointed to us, which we know, that the time for application was short. So other people may have missed that. They brought to our attention something which we also know, that because of the lockdown period, people have not been able to access ICT so that they are able on time to apply and get assistance. We think that if I may compare the process from sport and process from arts and culture, from sport there are federations. We worked through federations and they were able to identify athletes, but we insisted to the personal details of athletes. And indeed, that facilitation helped. From the side of arts and culture, we do not have the kind of federations which we have at sport and so on. But we do have organizations, national organizations, like CIFSA, like SAMIC, like SACHIVE, and so on. So those organizations, SASFED in the film industry, IBFC, also in the film industry, we are going to be having a conversation with them. So we'll be convening a meeting with them with an aim of getting them on board to help us to reach out to the artists. Because in the final analysis, we're not going to be happy as government that money has not been spent when we know there's an outcry out there, when we know there's desperation out there. So we are going to have that meeting, and we believe that with some of the suggestions which have already come to the fore from the industry itself, amongst other things, they have raised a possibility of having a second call for application. So we'll be discussing all those things with them because, as I said, in the final analysis, we want to make sure that our people get assistance. And I can assure creatives that whilst the process has not been as fast as we wanted it to be, because firstly of technical administrative glitches from our side, but two, we then felt that the team, the adjudicating team, which is doing a marvelous job in terms of being very pedantic in ensuring that everything is adhered to. We have decided we are beefing it up to give it more people who are going to be helping to fast track the process, so that at the end of the day, as soon as possible, people get assistance. So that is from the point of view of what we would have dealt with in the relief fund. And at the level of the live feed streaming and the proposals which we also are dealing with, we have directions for the actual work which should take place to ensure that we indeed get the assistance to those artists who would be successful and who have applied. So the directions issued in terms of the regulation 4, subsection 10 of the regulations made under section 27, subsection 2 of the Disaster Management Act of 2000, Act number 57 of 2000, live streaming of the creative sector services in support of the COVID-19 campaign. The purpose of these regulations, one, is to prescribe temporary measures or steps currently necessary to manage COVID-19 in order to reduce the impact in the Republic by preventing the importation of and minimizing the local transmission of COVID-19. And two, provide directions to the creative sector for film and television content production using local cast or performers and crews. Any such production undertaken during this period must comply strictly with the appropriate health and safety protocols. The production, dissemination, or broadcasting of information to the public through live streaming and the applicable measures set out in these directions. Mitigation measures. The following mitigation measures for alert level 4, according to subsector, are necessary to prevent the spread of COVID-19. Subsector, performing arts institutions or playhouses that have relevant infrastructure or facilities used for the creation and production of local content. The mitigating measures there, these facilities can produce content for streaming and live streaming without audiences. Monologues, minimal cast and technical support are required. Production must take place in compliance with Regulation 28, subsection 2 of the regulations, which requires that a compliance official to ensure that safety controls are strictly adhered to be designated. 2, all directions in respect of health protocols and exposure to persons to COVID-19 must be adhered to as per Regulation 16, subsection 6. 2, film and television production using local cast, living legends, and crew. This will include jobs throughout the value chain of production, post-production, such as technical crew of sound engineers, special effects, and animators. the mitigating, all directions in respect of health protocols and exposure of persons to COVID-19 must be adhered to as per Regulation 16. The following additional requirements will apply to content production. 1. Visibility of protocol information, information regarding the risk of spreading COVID-19 and what behavior is expected from everyone on set must be made to be visible in common areas and must be copied to all personnel of the company. 2. Preparing the workplace. The following are guidelines to prepare the workplace and a daily routine to be established thereafter. 1. Sanitizing of the environment needs to occur before shoot commences, during each shoot day and after rep each day. There must be dedicated cleaning staff to sanitize and clean bathroom spaces on a regular rotation throughout the day. A daily register of all persons granted access to the set with details of their daily temperatures must be compiled. Getting to work, transport. Where possible, all crew and cast must use their own transport. For those without their own, transport must be provided by the production in terms of the guidelines issued by the Department of Transport. Any transport arranged by the production management must be provided with a driver, and all occupants in the vehicle must wear face masks. The catering on set, catered meals and craft must be packed in boxes per person with sealed cutlery. Alternatively, the crew and cast must be allowed to bring their own meals. There must be no shared craft and catering areas. Crew and cast must be supplied with their own water bottles. Cast and crew on set and shooting floor, as provided for in Regulation 23, subsection 1b, cast and crew as workers must be allowed. The number of cast and crew must be kept at a maximum of not more than 50 people on set, inclusive of cast members. The curfew time of between 8 p.m. and 5 a.m. must be adhered to. The creative sector services will include filming content, production of commercials and entertainment for broadcasters, and live streaming using local cast and crew. All directions in respect of health protocols and exposure of persons to COVID-19 must be adhered to as per Regulation 16, subsection 6. The above mentioned additional directions apply during content production. The productions should somehow add storylines in support of COVID-19 safety measures. The scope and application. These directions apply to the creative sector and services and to public entities that have relevant infrastructure or facilities used for the creation and the production of the local content to be disseminated. The authorization. These directions are issued in terms of Regulation 4, subsection 10 of the regulation. And the live streaming of the creative sector services in support of COVID-19 safety measures during the national state of disaster, an authorized person or company in the creative sector may create or produce local content for broadcast and live stream any service or performance at any relevant infrastructure or facility under the control of public entity upon written approval by the accounting officer or other delegated official of such public entity, on condition that there must be no audience at such infrastructure or facility at any given time, provided that any person or company may utilize its own or other appropriate infrastructure or facility. The production of live streaming content must take place on terms and conditions to be agreed between an authorized person or company that desires to utilize the relevant infrastructure or facility of the public entity in question and accounting officer of the public entity or other delegated official. On general measures, a production for streaming must be conducted or performed in compliance with all applicable health protocols, directions issued by the relevant government departments from time to time, and in strict adherence of the regulations. These directions come into effect on the date of the publication in the Government Gazette and terminate on the date that the Minister directs otherwise, or when the national state of disaster terminates, whichever date comes first. Thank you for your cooperation.
Thank you, Nyambose and colleagues. That's the directions that the Ministry of Sports, Arts and Culture is now put in the public domain and gazetted for the purpose of ensuring that we, even as the creative sector, we are party to the efforts that are being put by all South Africans to stop the infections of this very deadly virus on our people. We will now take, as we always do, questions from the journalists who don't only ask questions for themselves, but they also ask questions so that all of us, even sitting at home, are clarified on the matters that are being raised by the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture through Unyambose, the Minister, and the Deputy Minister, Mamafu, and the DG Kabazela. We will now open for questions. Do we have any online? Thank you very much. Can we allow the first caller to come in? Thank you.
You can ask your question.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, Baba.
Sipilile baba, we can hear you loud and clear. Uthini umbuzo wakho baba?
Yeah, we are speaking to Mthandeni wami eMaritzburg. I-question enginayo kumhlonishwa ubaba uNyambose. Siyithokozela inkulumo yakhe. Kukhona lapho ecacise khona ukuthi payments they've started to make ama-payments. At the same time, i-adjudication isaqhubeka eceleni. Then i-question isithi, without determining first ukuthi how many beneficiaries are qualified, how did they arrive to a conclusion ukuthi this is how much they are going to pay? If I can make an example, what if the population is bigger than what they have expected? Will this not maybe end up, putting an athlete in a compromised position whereby the first group is getting better than the last group? So in short, how do they arrive to an amount that to be paid right now while adjudication is still continuing on the side?
Thank you very much. Do we have another caller? Or not yet? Okay, fine. We'll go to our trusted platform, It's called WhatsApp. Nongaf.
Thank you, Minister. The first person who sent questions is Matthew Savitz from Times Live, and he sent 3 questions. The first question is, have applicants been notified of their applications having been received, or of success or failure in making the application? Many artists have complained about not having received any communication regarding the status of their application. The second question is, has any indication been given as to how long the process will take, i.e. when can people expect to be notified of success or failure or of notification of the payment? And the last question from the same person is, what is the criteria for calculating the amount of relief per applicant based on earning losses from mid-March to June? And what's the minimum and maximum amounts to be payable per person? Then we have 2 questions from Precious from the African Post. And her first question is, the criteria for application specified that the arts industry personnel that lost work from the date of the President's address to June 2020 can apply. However, most artists have said that they have lost work that was scheduled for dates that are further than this. Will the department pardon the dates in the criteria to accommodate those creatives? And the second question is, regarding productions for live streaming, will the department allow theatres to be open for such operations without an audience, of course?
Thank you very much. Before, I know that there is one question that we have on our online services. Can we hear the caller? Shoni, we're listening.
Oh, awesome. I have three questions for the minister.
Let's start with 2. We will get back to the third one.
Okay.
We are listening, Shoni.
Okay, we can do that. The first question is, you said, I think 93 athletes were approved. Just in terms of that, how much money was it per athlete, and do we know which federations of the 25 the minister mentioned? And the second question is there a date in mind for when possibly sport could make a return? And is there a thought around playing behind closed doors, given all the conversations that are happening in the sporting world at the moment about that?
Since you're asking relevant questions, get to the third one.
Okay, the third question.
Why are you laughing, Shoni? People can hear you in the whole of South Africa.
Okay, the minister sent out a statement last week about SASCOC. Sorry, there's a delay. So the minister sent out a statement about SASCOC. Just in terms of that and what the minister said there, what is the deadline for SASCOC for them to fix things? And what is the minister's comment on the state of the elections at the moment?
Thank you very much. Minister, we are in your hands. You can decide who you want to deploy. But all of us will speak from here. Oh. Yes. Yeah. You see, there's nothing to speak from there.
The first point. This is a struggle. Thank you, Velase, and thanks for the questions. The DG is going to deal with the issues of people receiving letters informing them one way or the other. The Deputy Minister will deal with the issue of the sporting codes, who has received what. But perhaps on the first question, firstly, the understanding was that we are doing everything to fast track people getting a relief. So based on that, it was going to be difficult for us to wait for the entire process to finish, because we may take longer, or it may take longer for the process to finish. That is why we said those who have been approved immediately must get their funds. And that's what has been happening. As I said, it started at sport, it's happening now with arts and culture. So that's the issue. His question is related to the question from Times Live on the criteria for payment. We said that the ceiling is going to be 20,000 rands. So it means whatever you are, if you feel that you've lost 4 million, we won't have that 4 million. We will have this cake to slice for many people, maximum 20,000 rand. But this 20,000 rand does not mean that if we had asked for 5,000 rands or 10,000 rands, you'll voluntarily get 20,000 rands. So you'll get what you would have asked, as long as it doesn't go beyond the ceiling, which is 20,000 rands. The live streaming, yes, the directions I've just given stated categorically that the live streaming and the facilities would be using your playhouses, theaters, and so on, would be open for that. Would be open for that. Actually, if I may take this opportunity here, that part of the reason why we're having this live streaming, we said it when we started, is that we want to see, especially our public broadcaster, to play local content. And that struggle of creatives is our struggle. We would want to ensure government as a whole, the minister in the presidency here, who's also acting as Minister of Communications, we have made this point, and we've noted what has happened recently, where we're told through research that local content is not played as much as it should in South Africa. Once more, as we pleaded then, we're pleading again that let us see local content, dominating our lives, especially at this time, because that is going to help artists to ensure that they earn a living, their livelihood is better. In fact, soon, sometime next week or week after, the minister in the presidency and I will be engaging our public broadcaster to ensure that we really see this local content, because it doesn't help us to have needle time benefiting people from UK, from US, and so on, when we have artists in the country starving. So that is one thing which is coming out of this process. As we do live streaming here, we would want to ensure that it's not just for its sake, but it's for consumption by South Africans from our own artists. So DM first, and then DG would come on the rest of the questions.
Thank you very much, Minister Jackson Mthembu and Minister Nathi Mthethwa. Greetings to the media and the viewers and listeners at home. I'm going to respond to the question that has been asked about which federations out of the 25 have received the payment so far. Just before I go to that question directly, just to say that the minister had indicated that 93 athletes have received payment. That was the initial number. To date, as we are sitting here, there's about 293 athletes that have received payment. But of course, the rest was only finalized on Thursday last week. So the report is still being compiled, therefore, on who of those, from which federations. But from the 93 so far, it is people with the physically disabled sport people have received payment. The surfing body has received payment. The triathlon group has received payment. The netball South Africa athletes have received payment. Gymnastics has received. The golf athletes have received. Fencing has received. And canoeing has also received. Those are the 93. So we're still compiling the rest of the 291 now, so that we will be able to update the public on those. It's also important to note that, I don't know if Minister responded to the fact that how much are we paying them? The department had taken a decision to reserve the quantum for the relief, because remember, this is a relief just to help the athletes in these difficult times. So we are paying each athlete an amount of 20,000 rands. Each athlete is receiving an amount of 20,000 rands. I thought I must just clarify that. Thank you very much.
Minister Mthembu, thanks very much for the opportunity, and Minister and the viewers at home. No, thanks. Maybe to start by just confirming, DM, that yes, this morning it was confirmed on the question about the codes, that the additional codes that have been covered is boxing, and we've got the breakdown of terms of also the numbers there, but also tennis is also covered in Sanabo, has also been covered in relation to the sporting codes that have been in fencing, as DM had indicated. So almost all these sporting codes have been covered, and their payments, if they've not seen them, they will be seeing them soon. Possibly latest by tomorrow, those who might not have received their money, because that is processing that has been done. Now, in relation to the question about whether people have been informed, is when the first priority, when the deadline of the 6th came, on the date of I think the 8th or 9th, we were able to then give feedback to more than 600 people who had applied late, to inform them that they were not successful because they were already outside of the due date. And then with the process of adjudicating taking place as we speak, there is a process that has been set up to make sure that as the adjudicators make final decisions, we then inform people. And this morning, as I stand here, already 352 letters of regret have been sent to the 603 that the Minister indicated had not been successful. So we will continue to update all those as the adjudication progresses in a manner that they also have a clear stated reason why they were not successful. In that process, then the minister had set up a process of appeal that people who might feel that they've been unfairly or for one reason or the other, based on reasons that are given on their personalized letters, that they think they have a reason to raise the matter, that then they can raise it within that internal process to say, but department, can you review what happened here? I believe I had submitted a tax clearance certificate or a cancellation letter, and therefore then I think this process, maybe there is a misjudgment on my application forming the basis of rejection. I think those were the questions so that I needed to respond to. I think when will the sport return if even if behind closed doors? I think that question was raised. And I think at this stage, as we know, level 5 stands. As the government proceeds with a review of the impact of COVID and whether it is this level 4 or level 3 or goes back to level 5, we then should be able to communicate. But at this stage, that has not been a decision taken because these are all contact sports or activities, and they have all the potential because the coronavirus is transmitted by myself. As I move, it's a people-to-people contact disease. So minimizing and emphasizing what the minister said, that we have a long haul as this sector, exactly because of that nature of the sector itself. Thank you very much.
Sorry, Minister, I forgot the question on SASCOC. I think it was the last question. But perhaps just to finalize what the DM and the DG have said on the breakdown, 86 are from athletics, 47 is from boxing, canoeing 2, equine sport 21, fencing 7, golf 70, gymnastic 3, netball 8, football 17, sanabo 4, disability 15, surfing 5, tennis 2, triathlon 5. So that's the breakdown of people, the 293 Deputy Minister referred to. You recall, Minister, that there's been a process, lengthy process, engaging SASCOC, particularly on governance issues. And subsequent to that, there was a Zulman report, Zulman Commission, which SASCOC is expected to implement. I've forwarded a facilitator to ensure that things are facilitated. What has been identified in the Zulman report is adhered to. Mr. Mtobis Jamzashe sits there at SASCOC. Now, we've agreed with SASCOC with all the challenges they have related to the issues of election. As you know, there's a big thing about contesting for the presidency of SASCOC and so on. And we said SASCOC must deal with those problems by the 28th of March already. And 28th came and passed. Matters were not resolved. I've been meeting SASCOC a number of times. And I explained that we are not going to be meeting and becoming a talk shop. Things must happen. Things must move. And because you are failing to meet what you're supposed to and which we have agreed on, then maybe your matter should be dealt with at your council level. And maybe, so that we are not accused as government as interfering. I then raised the matter with the IOC and said, IOC, look at this matter of SASCOC, deal with it, because we want sporting bodies to deal with sport matters before we come as government. IOC responds and says, no, they fully agree with what I said are the problems and they are aware of those problems. But they felt that SASCOC should resolve its issues. So I accepted what IOC said. But I did point to them that we will wait and see whatever support is needed from us, we'll give. But I'm not convinced that SASCOC board is focused in ensuring that sport win in the country. But we accept what is said. So the thing now is back to SASCOC. And at that time, the issue of leadership, contest, and so on was resolved by the team, the legal team, which was dealing with the matter. That's where things are now. Our view is that the sooner we have the quadrennial general meeting of SASCOC to elect leadership of the board, the better. And that should happen. So I've heard people saying a lot of things about minister interfering in SASCOC, and some of the people are in parliament and disingenuous because we briefed them. We don't want to enter into operational matters of sport. We will enter when all else fail. If we still believe that bodies of sport can deal with the matter, we leave it at that. That's where we are insofar as the matter of SASCOC is concerned. Right now, we are observing the process towards the quadrennial general meeting where they will elect their leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister, Deputy Minister, and the DG. We will take the second round of questions. Can we start with our online services?
Minister, we have Mshengu from Sunday Times.
Mshengu, you are always very, very patriotic in asking questions from all ministers who come. Welcome, Mshengu. What's your question?
Siyabonga Velani. Umbuzo wami la kuNyambozi ngicela ukubuza ukuthi zahulumeni ukusiza abaculi abalahlekelwe income, for instance ngizosebenzisa uMaskandi okuwona umculo ama-CD. So abaculi bamaskandi for instance njalo nje ngogudi bayakhipha amacwecwe ama-CD bese bayakha kodwa kulokhu abakwazi ukudayisa ngenxa yedaba le-corona. Ngabe-ke iy'hlelo zahulumeni ukusiza kakhulukazi nabaculi bamaskandi. Sibonge kakhulu.
Sibonge kakhulu, Baba. Next. Okay. What's up?
The first question is from Nazir from Glow TV, and is asking, can the minister let us know what is the maximum amount, if any, show promoters that were to bring in musical artists from overseas during this lockdown period would receive? He's also asking how many applications have been received thus far. TD from News 24 is asking, how was the price ceiling determined for artists? And secondly, does the department understand how bookings are usually done in the creative sectors, such as contracts and paperwork are not in common use? And the last question is from Silusapo from Vukuzenzele newspaper. And the question is, the applicants who were not successful due to not having the right documentation, will there be an extension for them? And which sectors of the arts have been successful in their applications thus far? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I see you are grabbing a phone. We have got somebody. Okay, can we hear them?
We have Mike from the SABC
Hello, Mike. Mike, we are listening to you.
Hello, Minister.
Yes, Mike, we are listening.
So this is not Mike, this is Percival Young from ENCA, sir.
Okay. My apologies. Just in
No
my
problem,
head.
sir.
What's your question?
Minister, just to follow up, and I know the DG briefly touched on this matter about possibly playing or considering playing sports closed doors. Is that matter totally off the table, or is that something that's still being considered, though? And just another, the government always proclaims that sport forms part of cohesion in our country. Minister, will there be a time this year or maybe next year when we'll ever get South Africans get the time to go to sporting events? And do you think there will be enough time, especially when you touch on the SASCOP matter, for our international athletes to prepare for that small matter of the Olympics perhaps next year, sir, in the light of what's happening currently in the world, sir? Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was our last question, Minister and your team.
Thank you very much. To deal with the number of applications that we had received, particularly from the creative sector, we had received about 4,011 applications, more or less, 4,011 applications. And out of those, as the minister was doing the briefing, 1,050 have been recommended so far. They have been seen by the adjudicators. Let me rephrase. 1,050 have been seen by the adjudicators so far out of that number, and 232 had been conditionally approved, and 603 had not been approved, and 203 had been referred back where there is shortages of things to be dealt with. Now, if we listened well from what the minister was saying, is that the number of those that had not been approved is very high, and we are concerned about that. That's why, amongst other things, we will be having a dialogue with the creative sector team in the near future to discuss and look at things. But we are also looking at the recommendations that have been made by the adjudicators. And therefore, the question of whether we will open for second phase for reapplication will depend on those discussions that we are going to have. But from our side, the commitment is clear. We would want as many artists to actually benefit from this, number one. Number two, we also would like to make sure that a lot of them have access to this. We note the short time of the applications in the first round. We also note the fact that others couldn't access it because of the ICT issues. That's why we will then have those discussions and then, advise on the way forward in the near future. It's not going to be very long, because at the end of the day, we would like everybody to have the access to this. I thought it's important to raise that. And then the issue of the price ceiling, because I think Tsidi asked a question about the price ceiling determination. We looked at the big number of the people that are in the creative sector as well as in the athletic sector. And our thinking was that we would like as many of them to have access to this relief fund, because remember, this is a relief. It is not a salary or a payment for any money that has been lost for what we are doing, but government is saying we care, and government is saying we understand the situation you are in. And we had then looked at the price ceiling of a 20,000 rand to make sure that we are able to stretch the 150 million as much as we can to make sure that as many people are accessing that money. It is not about somebody who would have lost a 300,000 deal and therefore expects that the government would pay back that 300,000 deal. That was not the case. The case was saying, here as government, we want to meet you halfway, we understand the situation, and therefore we agreed that 20,000 would actually deal with that in the interim to look at the interim relief. It is a relief. So I thought I must just stress that. Thank you very much.
Yes, maybe I must just also, Minister Mthembu, just to add on this issue of the relief, because when we interacted also as a department with our colleagues at a small business, but also our colleagues at the Department of Labor, at DG Lamati, as well as DG Nkuna, as well as the understanding was that there is a total package of government relief program. Now, there are, if we look at those who applied, who in fact were applying on behalf of their employees and those things. And there was a very strong advice from the panel that we must also make people aware of other alternative avenues for them to be able to access funding. Subsequently, then I engaged with my colleagues who gave me clear details on how, if a company is in fact applying on behalf of the workers, then who should they contact and how they should apply and direct to request that they get the UIF. But that was on condition that they acknowledge that if they were not paying UIF for the employees, then they will still pay for them even if they had not. Then with small business, they also indicated clearly details which we are communicating on how else they can contact, because whether you are in the arts sector or you are in the sports foreign, if you are small business, you are small business. You should then be able to also have that avenue to follow. And that is how we had discussed with my colleagues in these two departments when I spoke with also the teachers there. Now, on the question of on the contracts issue, as Minister indicated earlier, and I think this question was, do we have a sense of what it means if you don't have contracts? That is why the alternative was that people can also be able to provide us with, whether it's a letter that is that of commitment, that there was this event to take place. Remember, there is a saying in Chinese, if I can use, that sometimes you open a window for oxygen, but then the mosquito comes in. The risk here is that we need to make sure that we are providing relief to the right people. There is no room where, as we stated in our advertisement of this call for application, that corruption must still be fought, because down the line, if there is opportunity for corruption, there are no control measures, you will have a problem. Now, validation and verification of who claims to be the artist or who claims to be the athlete is quite crucial. That is why then these requirements were put there, not as punishment, but as safeguards. Now, so those contracts, we will be able to look at them, whether they are valid or they are not valid. If it is a letter that says there was a commitment, the adjudicators are dealing with those, because these are people who are experts in their fields. There was also then a question on who succeeded. As indicated, we had 232. We will then give the breakdown of, if it is individuals, are they from performing arts, or are they from fine arts, or are they from heritage, like we have done with the sport. At this stage, we are just dealing with the payment, and we'll be able to come back and provide that detail. The last question that was raised and which had not answered was, will then the issue of what happens with the losses beyond June? As Minister indicated, as the panels are finishing their work, they will then be giving us also their recommendations. But everybody anticipated that we were dealing with the period March to June, and therefore then we will have to work on what happens beyond that, looking at the developments related to the virus itself. And then I think ministers' consultations that are going to happen with the DM and the sector will also be able to give us guidance. But I can assure you that we have held a number of consultative engagements with various sector organizations as late as even last week, just to deal with that, and some of them are submitting their own proposals so that we work with the sector towards this. Finally, is that this relief, people must not look at national. Minister had engaged with the provinces. Provinces have done a lot of work in terms of their own processes to meet the needs, relief needs of the creatives at a provincial level. In fact, a number of them have given us a report in terms of how much they have set aside, they have set the criteria, others have already moved in terms of providing that relief. So it is a holistic approach that the department has after then the engagement with the MCCs of the provinces as well as the HODs. So we are dealing with it as a collective response to the needs of the creatives and the athletes.
The question of Umshengu, the first question, I want to respond to it by saying that the relief fund was open for everybody. All the genres of were opened for the fund, and therefore we hope even Maskandi applied in this fund, because there is no other pot except this one, which we have announced. Now, DG has indicated that there are people already who have been told more than 300 that they didn't make it. In the endeavor of ensuring that we really do everything to bend backward, not just responding and say it's a regret. You know those regret letters where we are not even given reasons. Some people will still have a strong view that something went wrong in the department or some process the department did not take into account. We have opened ourselves for that possibility by saying to people, you don't have to wait. You got it today. It's still fresh in you. You think that something went wrong in the department. Appeal today, as they got them. Appeal today. We have put together, outside of the department, a 3-member team to deal with that. We thought that people from the industry would be best suited for that, especially with legal background. Baba Steve Kekana is one of those people. Nakedi Ribane and Miss Nzimande Sbongile, who has been there a long serving HOD of Arts and Culture in KwaZulu-Natal. So those 3 people are going to ensure that if people feel aggrieved here and now, their grievances are attended to as a matter of urgency. The last point about playing behind closed doors. A few months ago, on the football front, we decided to have a meeting with the president of SAFA, President Jordan, and the chairman of PSL, Chairman Khoza, and we're discussing everything football. My final message to both of them is that they are occupying a very important space in our society as regard football. So as the Minister of Sport, Arts and Culture, I would nudge them to work together at all material times for the sake of football. Subsequent to that, I have been in contact with both of them and said to them, our country now has moved to level 4. So I need their wise counsel as leaders in football, their wise counsel on their thoughts regarding the reopening or softening of the lockdown with our own risk-adjusted strategy as government. So they must counsel me, both of them. And I emphasize that it would be advisable that as government we get one voice from them. So that's where we are. We've convened meetings with both of them. We're still going to meet with the president of SAFA. We arranged, we met. He's a bit far in province of Eastern Cape, so we couldn't connect. We agreed we'll have this meeting. But we did meet with the chairman of PSL, together with the chair of Kaizer Chiefs and Datem to talk about this thing. So they informed me that they are having a Board of Governors meeting on the 7th, Thursday. Then from there, they will come up with these suggestions. But as I say, I emphasize that when I have to elevate whatever proposals they have to my colleagues, yourselves in the cabinet and so on, I should be coming there with one voice. But this sport is one of the contact sport. There are others who have subsequently came to us and pleaded their case, who are looking into that. Golf is one of them, and have, motivated strongly that the nature of sport itself is not contact sport, and its safety in terms of the regulation, the 1 meter and so on, they fit to that, so it would be easier for them to adhere to that and so on. And other sporting codes are raising their issues. So we are looking into that. But as regards football, we will be dependent mostly from SAFA as the mother body of football in the country, and PSL. And with the hope that they will be guiding us as government in one voice. Thank you very much, Minister.
Minister, Deputy Minister, DG, and to everybody who's listening to this broadcast. Thank you very much for coming and keeping South Africa informed on what we're doing in the sector. And also reporting back on commitments that we had made. And so we really appreciate that. But again, the Minister and Deputy Minister has said, we are dealing with this virus, deadly virus. We still want to appeal to all people in the various parts of our country. Please stay at home. Please stay at home so that you don't have regrets that because of your not staying at home, so many people could have died as a consequence of your not staying at home. We are making this call, people are basically very infected throughout the world, in the continent, but also in our own country. We are having people who have passed on in our country, but throughout the world as well. Thousands and thousands of people who have passed on. So we are just appealing to our people that let's take this virus serious. It's deadly, and that's why we are doing what we're doing. But it's a responsibility for all of us. It's not only a government matter. Government can only do so much. But ultimately, it's all of us that must hold hands and fight this pandemic. If we don't work together to fight this pandemic has capacity to kill all of us. We are therefore saying to all those who are listening at home and everywhere else, where you are listening from, let's hold our hands together in fighting this coronavirus. We have been through difficult times as South Africa. We know that we are a resilient nation, but can we prove our resilience here as well by fighting together, fighting this disease? And basically those that are knowledgeable have advised us that to fight this disease, we just need to do the following: stay at home, social distancing, wash our hands regularly, and ensure that we don't touch or kiss. Well, I'm adding my own. But you can't kiss without touching. So we are appealing to people of our country. Let's not do things that will make us regret. We have seen people, when given an opportunity to go and exercise as individuals, but getting to the streets as groups, basically undermining the whole notion of social distancing. But those who have social distance, even under those circumstances, we say, thank you, because you have not only done that for yourself, but we have done it for all of us as people of South Africa. Let's just continue to observe these measures that have been put in place, because they have not been put in place for the fun of it. They've been put in place to save lives. This coronavirus kills. Please, let's do everything in our power, not only to save our own lives, to save lives of those that are dear to us, but to save lives of all South Africans. Sibonga kakhulu ke kulabo ke abahlala emakhaya nakulabo baqikelelayo ukuthi na legciwane abenzi ukuthi lize lithelele omunye umuntu, kodwa bayanakelela kanti futhi bazama ukuthi izimpilo zabantu eNingizimu Afrika zingaqwili, sonke singaqini sibhujiswa ilegciwane ngoba legciwane liyabulala. Having said that, thank you very much to everybody, to my colleagues, to the DG. That was the broadcast we had brought for you. Of course, thank you again to the sign language interpreters, to our colleagues in the industry, broadcasting, print journalists, and those who are in the digital space. We really appreciate what you are doing to convey this message to our people. My last announcement, as the Department of Communication and Digital Technologies, we have also given directions to the opening now at level 4 of the various areas of work, including post office, post bank, your telecoms. They can now sell computers, they can now sell cell phones in their shops. But we have said, as you do so, observe all these hygiene measures so that we do social distancing and we wash our hands and we sanitize even workers. As they come, we sanitize people as they come to buy cell phones and laptops and iPads, because it's in our interest to save lives. With those words, thank you and thank you again. We will meet with you again when we come to appraise you in other areas of our work as government. Thank you, my colleagues. Thank you very much.